Hi there. The woman who ran quality on our second shift could hear the bearings starting to fail. Not with instruments, with her ears, over the ambient roar of an extrusion line pushing polymer at 400 degrees. 3 shifts before the vibration sensor flagged the anomaly, she would walk over to maintenance lead and say, "Pull 2B tonight, or you'll lose it by Thursday." She was right so often that the maintenance team stopped questioning her and started scheduling around her. 23 years on that floor had trained her nervous system into a detection instrument no algorithm has yet replicated. Last year, a corporate team visited the plant to demonstrate a predictive maintenance platform, slick interface, real time dashboards, machine learning trained on vibration, temperature, and amperage data from 600 installations. The regional VP asked me afterwards, "So, how many heads can we take off the floor once this is running?" He did not ask what she knew. He did not ask what she was worth. He asked how quickly could she be removed. That question and the accounting failure it reveals is the subject of a study that dropped this week and should stop every manufacturing executive mid sentence. Thomas Davenport, the Babson professor who essentially invented the phrase competing on analytics, and Lux Srinivasan, co founder of the Return on AI Institute, surveyed 1,006 C suite executives across 11 countries and 32 industries. The headline finding, reported in Fortune CFO Daily, when CFOs are responsible for scoring AI outcomes, 76% of companies achieve a great deal of value. When anyone else owns it, the chief AI officer, the chief data officer, the CTO, the numbers crater. Only 2% of companies actually give the CFO that responsibility. Let that sit. The most effective lever for AI value extraction is used by 1 in 50 organizations. Srinivasan explains this with a phrase that should be tattooed on every, let's just say, boardroom wall. When finance gets involved, it brings institutional credibility behind numbers. Davenport, for his part, notes a pattern he has studied for decades. Technical capabilities arrive before the management systems to harness them. What makes AI different, he says, is how many consequential decisions, especially on workforce, organizations are making before those systems catch up. And here's where the study turns from interesting to devastating. 90% of the organizations surveyed have already reduced or frozen hiring in anticipation of AI productivity gains, not in response to demonstrated AI performance, in anticipation of it. Meanwhile, only 2% have made large headcount cuts tied to actual AI implementation. The actual headcount reductions in anticipation of AI are 30 times the number made from actual AI deployment. Srinivasan himself calls the gap plainly. Headcount reductions and hiring freezes are running way ahead of evidence. 2% acting on evidence, 90% acting on faith. And the faith is already proving fragile. Some of the companies that laid off workers citing AI have quietly walked it back, reopening closed roles and rehiring the people they let go after discovering that the AI tools required more human insight than anticipated. One survey found that a third of employers have already rehired between a quarter and a half of the of the roles they initially cut. This is not a correction, it's a confession. You would not write down a 50 million production line on a hunch. You would not scrap a CNC machine because a vendor showed you a brochure for a better one. Every piece of capital equipment on your balance sheet has a depreciation schedule, a maintenance history, a residual value assessment. Before you dispose of it, your CFO demands justification. Your auditors demand documentation. Your board demands a business case. But your workers are expensed. They appear on the income statement as a cost to be minimized, not on the balance sheet as an asset to be valued. And because they were never valued, they can be discarded without the burden of proof that would attend the scrapping of a forklift. This is the accounting error at the heart of the AI displacement crisis. Davenport and Srinivasan have built something important with the Return on AI Institute. Their economic maturity for artificial intelligence framework gives organizations a 6-stage roadmap to measure what AI is actually delivering versus what the sales deck promised. This is rigorous, necessary work. The CFO finding it is not a curiosity. It is a structural insight about how organizations create accountability for capital allocation. We've done it for 50 years in manufacturing. Finance works because finance measures. Measurement creates discipline. Discipline creates value. But here's what the study does not ask, and what I believe is the question that will define the next decade of American manufacturing. If the CFO's methodology is key to unlocking AI value, why isn't the same methodology being applied to the human capability AI is supposed to augment? The study found a 23-point advantage in AI value when both employees and leaders are trained. Yet, 58% of organizations have not trained employees in basic AI use. Read that again. More than a half of the companies spending millions on AI have not bothered to equip the people who will use it. This is not a training gap. This is a philosophical, fiduciary failure. It reveals what capital actually thinks about labor. It reveals what capital actually thinks about labor. Not an asset to be developed, but a cost to be managed until it can be eliminated. Srinivasan recommends what he calls narrow and deep AI, reimagining specific processes for the AI era and asking what gets automated and what still requires human judgment. This is smart. This is measured. And it still frames the question as a sorting exercise. What goes to the machine? What stays with the person? I would reframe it entirely. The question's not what still requires human judgment. The question is, have you ever measured the human judgment you already have? I think about the women on second shift every time someone asks me that sorting question. 23 years of pattern recognition, compressed into a nervous system that could outperform a sensor array. Nobody measured what she contributed. Nobody put a number on the reject rate she prevented, the downtime she averted, the maintenance cost she avoided by catching failures before they cascaded. Her intelligence was invisible to the balance sheet, which means, in the language of capital, it did not exist. And because it did not exist, it could be replaced by a dashboard without anyone having to prove the dashboard was better. No burden of proof, no business case, no CFO demanding justification. Just a regional VP asking how many heads could come off the floor. That is what I mean by the accounting error. It is not a metaphor, it is a literal failure of measurement. When a company freezes hiring or cuts headcount in anticipation of AI, it is destroying an asset it never appraised. The woman on second shift is an appreciating asset. Her knowledge compounds every year. Her pattern recognition deepens. Her institutional memory becomes more valuable precisely at that moment someone in the C suite decides that it is replaceable. My co author, Dr. Sridhar Ramamurthy, a former Deloitte forensic accounting expert and accounting professor, and I are building the measurement methodology for exactly this human value added capability. Easy to remember HVAC. It is the accounting framework that treats workforce intelligence as what it actually is, an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset. The CFO is indeed the right person to own the AI value equation. Davenport and Srinivasan are right about that. But the equation is incomplete. You cannot measure return on AI if you have never measured the return on the intelligence AI is supposed to augment. You cannot calculate what the machine adds if you have never calculated what the human already contributes. And here the study delivers a second revelation, buried in a table that received almost no attention in the Fortune coverage. Hear this. Only 9% of organizations identified generative AI as their most valuable AI type. 9%. 50% said analytical AI. 40% said rule based automation. The technologies that have been around for decades, the unsexy, operational, deeply embedded systems that work with existing human workflows rather than promising to replace them, are still generating the lion's share of measurable value. This is not a minor footnote. This is the study's own data confirming what the factory floor has known for 60 years. The automation that works is the automation that extends human capability rather than substituting for it. The Toyota production system called it Jidoka, automation with a human touch. It was never about removing the person from the process. It was about giving the person better tools to do what the person already did well. Generative AI is the hardest to measure, the study confirms, because its use cases are broad and shallow. Of course they are. Broad and shallow is what you get when you deploy a technology without first understanding the deep and narrow intelligence it is supposed to complement. And deep and narrow is exactly what the women on second shift had 23 years of it, compounding quietly, invisible to every spreadsheet in the building. The 9% finding is the Davenport Srinivasan study accidentally proving my ministry thesis. The technologies that augment human intelligence create value. The technologies that promise to replace it cannot even be measured. Here's what I would say to every CFO reading Srinivasan's advice to get involved. Yes, get involved. Bring your methodology. Bring your rigor. Bring your institutional credibility behind the numbers, but do not stop at measuring the AI. Measure the people. Put human capability on the balance sheet, not as headcount, not as labor cost per unit, but as appreciating intellectual capital with compounding returns. When you do, you will find something remarkable. You will find that the 90% of companies freezing hiring in anticipation of AI have been writing down an asset they never bother to appraise. You will find that the narrow and deep approach Srinivasan recommends becomes infinitely more powerful when you know with financial precision what the humans in the process already contribute. And you will find that the 76% value achievement rate for CFO level AI is not the ceiling, it's the floor. The ceiling is what happens when the CFO measures both sides of the equation, the artificial intelligence and the intelligence that was already in the room. Thank you.